know.
Okay. That was odd.
Yeah, what happened to the music?
The final countdown, quite ominous, Brendan. Well,
Indeed.
yes. How are you, Brendan?
I'm very well indeed, Ollie. I feel a little bit unkempt today or whatever arriving on the show. I did a lot of walking and running about, but look, we're here anyway, a few minutes late, but that's not even our fault. We were here ready for business at 9 o'clock in Punto on the button, but I don't know, some delays, but let's hope we can get the show on the road nice and smoothly from here on out. And of course, EPA, Colombia, which we're going to be talking about in a little bit. If people have no idea what we're on about, well, we'll get into that. How has your week been?
Pretty good, I would say, Brendan. Pretty darn good, and looking forward. With a lot of minor things done, I'm really looking forward to a holiday for once.
Great. Yeah, I too have to get out of the city. Although I think I'm going somewhere tomorrow. Is Subichoke out of the city? I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not 100% where exactly, but I have. I have a little part.
When I say a holiday, I mean a holiday in the Colombian sense. I'm not actually going anywhere, sadly.
Just a break. Okay. Well, I'm just thinking tomorrow I'll be getting makeup. I could do with it now. Look at the reflection on my forehead. Anyway, let's get on with things because we are a little bit late. And I know everybody was waiting anxiously for us to start. So we'll get on with it, guys. And this week, we had the publication of Bogotá's crime hotspot. So on tonight's Bogotá Nights, Colombia's only live and interactive English language chat show, as you know by now, we're discussing insecurity in the capital, from low-level pickpocketing and opportunistic thefts to being held at knife point or worse still, gunpoint. We want to hear about your crime-related stories here, be you a born and bred Colombian or a blow-in like Ollie and myself. In other words, wait for it, guys. How much juicy papaya have you given in these parts? And I'm sure many of you, like us, generally detest that expression for most cases. Or perhaps, particularly for our non-Colombian viewers, you've been pleasantly surprised during your time here. That is to say, you arrived with a perception that there'd be crime around every corner, yet your actual experiences have been anything but that. Whatever the case, we want to hear about your malevolent mishaps, lucky escapes, or as the case may be, crimeless crusades in these parts. Send us your messages right now and they'll magically appear on our live screen. Or if you're watching this recorded, you can still get involved by commenting on where you're viewing or via tweet. The handle being @BogotáPost, everybody's favorite English newspaper, with the hashtag Bogotá Nights. This show is all about viewer interaction after all. We'll be doing our crime call shortly, but first it's our take on the big news stories of the week. A week that's been rather slow for big stories, it has to be said. But Ollie, tying into crime and insecurity in Bogotá, today we have the influencer, as I mentioned at the start, known as EPA Colombia, sentenced to over 5 years in prison for acts of vandalism during those protests in 2009. Now, first of all, who is EPA Colombia? And is this a surprising sentencing, heavy-handed or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is... Look, I don't think you need to defend her actions in order to say this seems a little draconian, to say the least. Especially, Brendan, because, the official reason that's being given here is with terrorism ends, fines del terrorismo. Now, I think that's stretching it very thin. Look, it wasn't ideal what she did, but to call it terrorism seems, as two of the judges did, seems extreme. And 5 years. And actually, Brendan, the 5 years is what everyone's concentrating on. Also, nearly 500 minimum salaries worth of fine. I mean, this is heavy.
Okay, well, I don't want to kind of belittle it or be facetious about it, but I'm sure through her influencer role, she's got plenty of cash. But just, can we go back a little bit? Because who is she? She shot to fame, was it around one of the World Cups? Is that right?
2014, we've got a young working class lady D, who pops up. She's an influencer. Now, this in itself is relatively unusual. Certainly at that point, most influencers were kind of well-off Strato 5, Strato 6 people, very much fitness, showing off about their rich lives. She wasn't doing that. She was doing something that's popular now but wasn't then, which is very much showing kind of the life of, let's say, more average Colombians, more representative Colombians. And one of her things is that for the 2014 World Cup, she had a habit of saying, hey, epa, as in, let's go, Colombia. Doesn't really mean anything, just kind of a let's go, get going sort of thing. The reaction to her, I always thought, was very, very class influenced. Very much so. And then she kind of, did the usual sort of milking her fame for a while, as you would, to be fair, in that situation. And then she sort of disappeared for a while and ended up running a keratin company. So, hair products. Not something I need to use, but for those of you out there with weaker hair, I can see where it would be useful. So, she did very well. She had a very popular sort of keratin line of products. People like her. She's popular. She strikes a chord with a lot of people. But she was pretty much, in the background at this point. Her influencer life seemed more or less over, or not as big as before. Then suddenly in 2019, up she pops with a video. We all thought she was more or less in retirement from that sort of thing. Pops up on a video, smashing up her Transmillennial station, and actually, let's be fair, helping to smash up. To read some of the reports this afternoon, you would think that she was single-handedly, with the hammer of Thor, destroying this station. She was half-heartedly tapping at it with a hammer, a bit like an auctioneer. The thing is, she videoed it. And I think, to be honest, Brendan, it's hard to not feel that her greatest crime in the eyes of the Colombian state was really to be the wrong sort of person doing this.
Yeah, like basically, would I be going too far to say that she was kind of Niera?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that'd be right.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, Niera in the sense of how the phrase is used nowadays rather than how it originally came in. So, if you think about when the word Niero started coming in, it was always to do with sort of criminal behavior, which I suppose is what she's doing now. That's true. But the original criticisms of her were all, oh, yeah, she's so Niera, very classista, very... very, very sort of snobbish sort of view of her.
Yeah, basically, for those who may not be too familiar with the terms Niero or Niera for a woman, basically nowadays, kind of a typical working class barrio popular woman or man who dresses in a certain way and speaks in a certain way. And I guess we can all identify with those perhaps in our own countries of origins as well. But that's what we're getting at. So this kind of classist idea, I can imagine then how that does play out with the media and the original influencers back in the day from their, I guess, Strato 4 or 5 or 6, whatever backgrounds, and showing off their beautiful bodies and blah, 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 blah. Of course, you said she changed the influencer model, but then that was taken on by our heroes, Dominic Wolf and Zach Morris in many other ways, showing the average Colombian and how they live. But of course, when a foreigner does it, it's far better. But you really do think they've thrown the book at her here, and it's over the top. I'd like to know what other people think.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what. I mean, I've seen opinion has been divided, and I'm really happy to see so much support for her out there. I mean, I'm certainly not saying she should be getting off scot-free. I mean, I'm not saying that she's 100% innocent. We literally have video proof. Of what she did. However, there needs to be some sort of clemency. If we look at the justification of this is absurd, Brendan. If they just said, look, she was caught on video, there has to be consequences, throw the book at her, fine. At least we're not lying. But to call it terrorism, come on, this is absurd. And also, by the way, Brendan, let's be honest about this. this isn't a fully fair process, full stop. She was tried by the tribunal, the tribunal of Bogotá. This isn't open court. This isn't a jury of her peers. This is 3 judges making a decision. Again, 3 rich, well-positioned judges. Now, 2 of them said, yep, this is terrorism. The other one dissented. He's given his arguments to espectador. To espectador. And I have to say I agree with him. Now, calling this vandalism, absolutely. You have to say, of course, it's vandalism. You could say that, she bears a cross in terms of people of filming it and having people watch her channel. So, people might follow her example. Okay, again, that's fair enough. But to call it terrorism, I mean, what ideology is she supposedly pushing? And more to the point, if you want to make an example of her, do it 2 years ago. But to do it now, 2 years after the event, everyone had forgotten her role in it pretty much up until now, unless what you want to say is, actually, we want to send out a message, and that message is, if you're a college kid who goes out and gets in on the protests and mummy and daddy aren't too happy about it, fine. But we get too many of them poor kids out protesting, we're throwing the book at them. Absolutely hanging them out on a cross. And yeah, I have to say, she feels like a scapegoat. She feels like a martyr. She feels like a scapegoat at this point.
Yeah, I have to say, I haven't read all the details of the case, but it does seem over the top. I mean, the fine in itself would have been enough. I mean, to serve time.
Yeah,
for that. I mean, effectively, then you could say.
And look, she didn't kill anybody. She didn't even do that much damage to the station. For Christ's sake, she's not. Again, when they sort of say, "Oh, she was out there causing." The amount of minimum salaries that she's been charged with is completely disproportional to, the minor damage she's done half-heartedly hitting at a window. And let's not forget either, she was very much in tune with popular sentiment. Back in 2019, there was a howl of anger. There was a rage against the system. And actually, you know what, Brendan? Something else that really sort of slightly irritates me here is she hasn't even been given the option of casa por cárcel, house arrest, which is handed out in Colombia to cases of corruption that, in terms of damages to this country, far outstrip what she's been accused of. Look at somebody like Arias, sitting around in his gigantic house. Now, you could say, okay, well, Uribe's in house arrest. Okay, fair enough. He hasn't been convicted yet. That's relatively reasonable to have him under house arrest. But how on earth can you justify Arias being under house arrest for his part in convicted in an enormous corruption scandal? Yeah, a woman who goes out and, throws a hammer around a station for a bit. Come on, it hardly seems fair.
Yeah, it seems very disproportionate, as you said. So I'm guessing you're going to be virtually signing the change.org campaign that's going around. They've already got it up. I think I saw the news at about whatever time it was today, and by 5 o'clock in my email, I had an email with the petition to sign to fee, or at least caption of you said house arrest or whatever, or EPA Colombia. What's your name, by the way?
Sorry, I missed a lot of that.
Oh. Yeah, no, so yeah, my connection again here seems to be a little bit dodgy. I don't know, was it to do with the rain has arrived? I was saying though, anyway, the change.org petition, I guess you're going to be signing it. But what is her real name? I guess people can easily just find her.
Danedi Barrera.
Yeah, EPA. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. I don't think it'll be the last we'll hear of it, because, as we said, it's been making a lot of noise, and I have a feeling those on the side of leniency might get their way somewhat. Maybe it'll be just reduced to the fine, and we'll all move on from it. And I don't think anyone will be terribly hurt by that.
No, that would seem reasonable.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, moving on, and Ollie, this is something we touched on a few weeks ago. And by the way, just in relation to crime, of course, this was more vandalism, but crimes against the person or incidents that you've experienced here in Bogotá and Colombia in general. We're going to be talking about crime. It's in relation, we had Bogotá's hotspots, crime hotspots released during the week. So we're kind of linking into that, and we're talking about our incidents of crime, what's happened, what are the most common ones that as a foreigner you might expect, or as a local as well. So do get your comments in about that. We'll be talking about that very shortly. But moving to another news topic for a moment, we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago about the migration crisis in Necoclí and in Turbo in the north of Antioquia. And also now, apparently, according to El Espectador, well, not now, but according to El Espectador, it's also an issue on the southern borders with Ecuador down in the department of Nariño. So what's the latest there, Nelly? I guess one positive thing is it seems to be getting a lot of national and international attention. So I guess there's a lot of resources going in here to try and get these people moving them on or whatever. But number one, where are they going to go to? Because the whole idea is that they try and get into the United States, but there's a lot of tension on that southern border right now as well in the US. So, I mean, what kind of a journey can they expect in the weeks and months to come?
A highly unpleasant one, I would imagine, and highly unpleasant up until the end. I mean, what we have at the moment is a bunch of people who have been destabilized in various parts of the world, whether that be Venezuela, Dominica, or Haiti. And of course, especially with the latter, Colombia has its part to play in that as well. I mean, I don't know that I'd fully lay the blame at their door, more at the people that contracted those soldiers. But nonetheless, let's be clear that Colombia did play a part in that. But I mean, look, these people are now they're a hot potato, and everybody wants to pass them on. Colombia wants them to get the hell out of Colombia. They don't care where they go. When they get to Panama, it's the same thing. And I think Panama really only wants to accept them insofar as they can shed them immediately off to somebody else. And fundamentally, I think, the end of this is they're going to be Mexico's problem, as they attempt to cross over into the United States. So, yeah, look, it's a really unpleasant situation, full stop. Nobody really leaves their home in this kind of circumstance through wanting to do so. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, from a Colombian perspective, and indeed throughout Latin America, because, okay, you mentioned Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, obviously Cuba. But there's also, I believe, people from Africa and some Asian countries as well as a back route to get in to the United States. So, number one, I guess not many of them would like to stay in Colombia. And it has to be said, Colombia is obviously shouldering its fair share of refugees with the crisis in neighboring Venezuela and things like that. So I don't know, there's no agreement in these parts like you have in Europe, that Dublin Protocol or the Dublin Agreement about the first country where they get into, which is a mess in itself as well. It's kind of like everybody pays lip service to the idea of trying to help these refugees. And yeah, I know not every case is worthy, in inverted commas, whatever. But then nobody wants them as well. So they just kind of be on the road indefinitely.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, there's something to be said for the countries that at least are honest about these things. And let's not forget that the US, despite being a country that goes out of its way to destabilize regions, the US very much is a country which ignores and does not take in refugees. If you look at Syria, Merkel opened up the borders, looking at 800,000 refugees. England, to a degree, did. Cameron was forced into it after watching images literally of children washing up on the beach dead. And the US took in, a country the size of Europe in terms of population, not far off in economy. And, they took in, 6,000 refugees in the whole country. I mean, it's not shouldering a fair part. And that's why a lot of refugees are trying to, that's partly why a lot of refugees are trying to get to America. Like you say, they don't want to stay in Colombia. A lot of Haitians will speak much better English than Spanish. They'll probably have contacts in the US. They've already got dollars. They don't want to have to change them for pesos. The real question is Panama going to take them? I mean, that's Colombia's, clear and pleasant worry. And by the way, you alluded to this, but I think it's something we should highlight more, because I don't think Colombia gets enough credit for this. Now, there's plenty to criticize the current government about, and indeed we have, week in, week out. However, when it comes to taking in refugees from Venezuela, they have done sterling work in a political climate where, frankly, they don't have to do that, and it's unpopular that they do it. So hats off to them for doing the morally right thing.
Yeah, I guess those who are more in the know or a little more empathetic about this would go back in history when Colombians were fleeing to Venezuela as well. So I guess there's that kind of balancing out factor. But as we both know, that doesn't always get voiced amongst all the anger, perhaps, and the crime and violence that has come because of the Venezuelans, Ollie, because it didn't exist in this country before they came.
No, yeah, that's very true. I mean, I remember being here in 2012, Brendan. Like, I would regularly just leave my wallet on the table in a bar, no problems. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even have a bike lock.
No, you didn't need it. Roses growing on the streets, I recall. Maria Fernanda Cabal, speaking of hardliners, though, she has a take. You mentioned Haiti again. We like to mention Maria Fernanda Cabal every now and again, the senator. Senator, I'm correct in saying that. Yeah, she is. What did she have to say, though, about the mercenaries? Heroes?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. She's sort of saying, they've got to be brought back to Colombia. We can't abandon them. You're thinking, hang on. The defense ministry is taking a very different line. Milano is saying, oh, well, they're mercenaries. He's doing a really sterling communications job, by the way. Any students of communication out there, he has done a wonderful job of changing the narrative from ex-soldados, ex-militares, very much to mercenarios. Very well done, I have to say.
Okay.
And done with good reason as well, because there are questions to be asked there. What exactly are the links between Colombian military personnel when serving and going on into sort of private, I mean, what do you even call these groups? Private armies? Private attack forces?
Yeah, well, I think I lost a little bit of that as well, connection-wise here again. But yeah, can you hear me there again, Alan?
But yeah,
I think I'm back.
Let's move on.
Yeah, well, anyway, Maria Fernanda Cabal. She's always good for a laugh, if that's what we can call it. Quickly, though, I just want to mention sport, and then we'll get on to our main topic. Just because it's a holiday weekend, and you were saying that you're going to look forward to a little bit of a holiday. We have a 3-day weekend coming up with Monday a Festivo. Update on the league, of course. Still no word of sort of back after the week. No word, have you?
I think I lost a lot of that.
Equally. So my screen is going in and out here. I'll have to find out who the operator is here and give out to them. I need better connection. No, I was going to say we still don't go back in.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me in the sound?
Yes, we've got you now. We've got you now.
Okay, good. No, I was going to say, have we discovered our supporters allowed back in El Campín yet? Or that's still indefinite that they're not going to be allowed? They're not allowed in El Campín for games.
Nacional have said that they're not happy about it. They feel like they're being singled out. God knows what's going on, frankly. I'd imagine decisions will be taken extremely late.
Because we do have a Bogotá.
Yeah, sorry, I lost that.
Gone again there. Yeah. I was going to say we have a derby, a Bogotá derby on the bank holiday, the public holiday Monday, Santa Fe and La Equidad in El Campín, but I guess it's going to be played behind closed doors. Not that there are many supporters. 16 in La Liga Betplay and La Equidad 18 as things currently stand. News, just by the way, came out this evening of Colombia's. They're going to play 3 games now in the next international window of fixtures, obviously for the World Cup qualifiers. So on the 2nd of September, it's Bolivia away. They're staying down that side of the world to play Paraguay away on the 5th, and then they're back up in Barranquilla for Chile at home. So 3 big games. Bolivia away is never easy.
No, it's not, and especially not 3 days after playing a match at sea level.
Well, no, Bolivia's going to be their first one. So it's Bolivia first, then Paraguay,
yes.
then Chile.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that'll be tricky.
But still, all the players will be going from their clubs up to that, 3,000 plus meters above sea level. Anyway, but we'll talk about that in due course closer to the time. But anyway, Ollie, we'll get on to talking about crime in Bogotá. And the kind of reason we want to talk about this today is not that we're saying, obviously, this is a crime-ridden city. If it was, I guess neither of us would still be here, really. We could choose to live anywhere, practically. White privilege, isn't it?
In part.
Anyway, where are the worst hotspots?
Well, looking at this list that we've had printed that we've had released. It seems like, and this isn't kind of the full hotspot list, but nonetheless, it looks like your worst place to be is going to be in Chapinero, La UPZ Chico, which is a bit of a surprise, actually. But I guess there's probably quite a lot of, drunk people walking around, things like that. And it's very, very important, I think, to remember that these numbers really relate to denuncias. And that's a problematic thing to measure in many ways. But nonetheless, we've had 1,624 cases denounced this year, which is more than the last year. Now, that's very misleading, I think, because, of course, last year we had extreme lockdowns, much, much heavier lockdowns than we've had this year. So that is a bit misleading. Then we're off to Santa Fe, Palo Canal. No surprise to see that high on the list. Nearly 1,500 denuncias there as well, and a big jump up from last year. So it's 250 more than last year. Then it's a big jump down. We've got Las Nieves in El Centro and in Engativa, which I'd never really thought of as being a particularly dangerous place, but there you go.
Yeah, I was down there a couple of months ago, cycle down there. I was teaching a class, and yeah, it's like not parts of it aren't the most pleasing. Now, of course, if somebody comes around where I live, they'll kind of go, Brendan, God, it looks like a dodgy enough place to be living around at night time. But going by those figures, I live in paradise. You're the one that lives in a dangerous area. But like, we got to remember, these aren't just so crime. Like, how many crimes happen around here and nobody does to report them because you're just kind of going, what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the big thing is here, people tend to make denuncias if they have like a pressing reason. So you tend to see denuncias when people have lost cedulars. You tend to see denuncias when people have lost a postpaid phone. So, you know, if you're on a mobile phone contract, you know, there's insurance built into that. So, of course, you'll make the denuncia. Rich people in Chico probably have insurance. They need to make a denuncia. If, on the other hand, you've got a Fletcher and you know, it's all pre-pago, you know, you just think, what's the point? Certainly, you know, if somebody robbed my phone, yeah, I can't. I mean, I probably, to be honest, actually, I'm being slightly facetious here. I did make a denuncia the last time I had something stolen. Not because I thought that, you know, I could get anything out of any insurance, but just because I thought it was the right thing to do, and I think the police should have more information rather than less about criminal activity. But equally, yeah, I didn't hold out much hope.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a matter of course that you do it. But David Allen Simmons and Camilo, thanks for the thumbs up, Camilo. Profound, I like that. Give us a smiley face as well. We like those. But David Allen Simmons just saying, well, he says everywhere's a hotspot now. This is the other thing, because there's the perception and there's the reality. Like, there is a perception out there, and it's difficult to get the reality because, you know, you have to factor in is everybody reporting, etc., etc., etc. Like, is it worse today than it was 10 years ago? Now, I've been here. Yeah, I've been here almost 10 years.
Not even close. Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, like that nobody reports it. Yeah, I've reported the last couple of times that it's happened because my cedula in 2018. Interesting, you mentioned the pandemic. Of course, last year, 2020, you could say, because not many people were out, there was a lull, as you mentioned, with those figures. But now, because there might be more people in desperate situations, then yeah, maybe we will see a rise compared to 2019 for this year. I guess we'll have to wait until the year is out for that to happen. But like, nothing happened to me in 2020 because Jonathan Hemming, who's a regular viewer, but he did write when we were doing the advertising for this in one of the Facebook groups, and he said he's been here more or less the same time as me, almost a decade, and he only had one incident, and it happened going to a match in Tunja, and the Millonario supporters apparently were kind of running off a bus, a load of them, and they managed to pickpocket his wallet. And then he said he had one other minor incident. Some old guy tried to stab him, but he just ran off. I've practically had one incident a year that I can remember, and I mean that's probably the operative word there that I can remember because there's been alcohol involved, which is maybe not a good idea if you're going to be on your own and wandering the streets or whatever. Yeah, but so I don't know. I kind of feel like Lemony Snicket's a series of unfortunate events, and indeed, Jonathan, if you are watching, you've given me a bit of inspiration. I think I'm going to document some of those cases just to highlight, and I'll go through them in a bit, like some of the more kind of popular that can happen to expats here. But Ollie, you want to talk about, you mentioned your bike when we were saying before in those lovely innocent days back in 2011 and 12 that you didn't put a lock on your bike, not. But bike theft here is a bit different than what you might expect back home in the UK or in Ireland or the US.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, when you're thinking bike crime, I find absolutely impossible to describe to fellow cyclists in other countries, because basically what happens here when we talk about robberies of bikes it's not at all having your chain cut. I mean, people use really poor quality chains here, and with good reason. People are very unlikely to cut the chain. You don't see very many people with proper bolt cutters. You certainly don't see a lot of people with battery-powered angle grinders, which is, how things operate generally in London. But what's going to happen is you might have guys with machetes spring out of some bushes and push you off your bike or hit you off your bike, and then sort of rob you and take maybe your bike, but definitely your bag, etc. Which is an alarming way to get robbed, to say the least. And by the way, if for anyone wondering, if you're wondering why you often see cyclists in the night riding in the road and not on the bike lane, that's why. It's because riding on the bike lane, they're much more likely to get assaulted by people, whereas riding in the traffic, people are less likely to come into the traffic with machetes because they might get hit by a car.
Right. Okay. But as you say, if you're involved in an incident like that, being robbed at knife point or whatever, it's going to make you quite reluctant to go out on your bike again. Now, just kind of two contrasting comments. David Allen Simmons just saying that he knows Colombians here have been robbed for the first time this year. So again, the perception perhaps, or it might be real, it's difficult to know that crime is on the up. And then Angela...
we do need to remember, Brendan, everybody gets robbed for the first time once. I mean, that's not an unusual... that's not an unusual thing. I'm surprised as well, going back to David's earlier comments, like he says, phones are being robbed in Virrey.
Oh, it's always happened, though.
That doesn't sound particularly sort of unusual, I wouldn't say. And of all the places for a phone to get robbed, Virrey is not the worst place for it, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say what Angela's comment about, it is the perception and the news, because even today we've had Claudia Lopez saying that the police here in Bogotá are going to be reinforced with 1,500 more police. I don't know if that means extra, or they're just going to have a greater presence on the street.
Absolutely, but listen, there's no point. How many times have we said this, Brendan? We had a special a couple of weeks ago. It's not about the number of police, is it? It's about making them do their jobs. Yeah, there was a very worrying development which has been snuck out, which is that we're having military members from, I believe, the 30th Brigade. Are now being, sort of drafted into Bogotá. We have military on the streets. It's absolutely bizarre.
Yeah. Well, again, it's the perception. So at least the powers that be want to be seen that they're clamping down and things are going to be safer. But as you said, if they don't do their job, it doesn't mean a thing at all. So let's see what happens. Just to talk about now, this is going to make me sound ridiculously stupid, but I want to talk about some of the common things that have happened to me, the non-violent. Because to be fair, this probably won't come across on the screen very well, but I still have the little bit of a scar from a stabbing that I received back in 2012 when trying to help a German Turkish friend who was being robbed at the time. Again, around El Virrey. It was close to there, actually. So that was 2012. So I've had a few incidents with knives being involved, but the stupid ones, I call them the stupid ones, and this is the dar papaya idiot Brendan. Of course, you can always ask the questions, why does this exist here in the first place? But we know, and Camilo's made a comment there about crime and poverty and things like that, so we know all the reasons. But sitting on a bus, I was using my phone, kind of trying to take advantage of the dead time at a bus. I was writing a story or preparing for a class or whatever using my phone. And then it came to my stop, which is around Calle 93. Bus was packed. I was wearing a shirt with a chest pocket. Stupidly put the phone in the chest pocket. Reached for the button. And in that like 10-second spell, the phone was gone. And it's like, what the hell? So grab this guy who was next to me. He obviously being a bit generalizing here, but he looked like the type of guy who may have stolen my phone. So I grabbed him and I told the bus driver, like, I'm not moving until this guy gets off with me. So he did get off. I make a long story short anyway. So I said to him, like, you've got my phone. And then he said, no, I don't have it. So we went to a Minutos to called it. Miraculously, somebody answered, a woman answered. And I said, look, that's my phone. I don't want to call the police or anything like that. I just want my phone back. That's practically my office. She said, okay, that's fine, no worries. And obviously I had her accomplice with me, but I was a bit stupid, to be honest, again, or wasn't thinking straight, more is the point. So while I was on this conversation and the guy hears me and I said, okay, well, we're going to meet at this point that I arranged with the girl. So he sods off. I go to the meeting point, call again, and of course, the phone is off. So he ran back to her and just said, oh, this idiot gringo, he just let me go. But yeah, like, so the stupid things of just, like, if you're getting off the phone, like, don't have them in a pocket that can easily be got to or whatever, have it wrapped up in a bag, zipped up, whatever. Another similar incident, I was in a pub on my way back from a class in a tienda, but this was around Cedritos, safe area. I thought, this is fine. I was meeting a good American friend of mine. Well, actually, he'd said, oh, if you're passing by, let's go for a drink. It was unplanned. I usually don't like to go drinking when I've got my laptop with me. But he said, oh, it's this area, it's fine. So we went into this tienda that was a local for him. And stupidly, again, I had my bag under my seat. Yeah. And 1 second, then I just noticed somebody tapped me on the shoulder there. I look around, and like a 10 second, put my hand down. My bag! Gone. Yeah. Gone with the laptop in it. Haven't had as good a laptop since. That was a very good Asus laptop. I bought this kind of crappy Lenovo after that because I was so annoyed. I said, I'm not spending big bucks on that on another laptop if I have to be lugging it around Bogotá. But anyway, they're the stupid ones, Ollie. So it's like, I wrote a story years ago saying, Colombia had the tourism phrase, the only risk is wanting to stay. And I had a play on that saying the only risk is letting your guard down. You really do have to, and Jonathan Hemming mentioned that in his comment. He said, like, I guess why I've only had one incident is that every time I'm out, I feel on edge. Now, again, I mentioned at the start, we're not saying this is crime-ridden, but it's just you have to remember where you are. Like, if you leave your jacket on the back of a chair or something here, well, don't expect it to be back, or to be there, I said, when you come back. It's going to be gone.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you say. I mean, there are clever methods of doing this. We talk about scams, So you've got the clowns on Septima. Their preferred method is to sort of spray you with foam. And then, of course, somebody else comes along to go, oh, let me get that foam. Oh, I'm so sorry about what my fellow Colombians have done. Whoop! There we go, So that's kind of a common one. There's, of course, things like you get in a taxi and another taxi, the taxi driver drives you to a place where other people rob you. All those kind of like little mini scams that you kind of need to be careful. But I think you're right. You're right to say it's not crime ridden, and it really, really isn't. I mean, it's not that hard to stay out of trouble in Bogotá. It really isn't. There's plenty of the city is absolutely safe. What is interesting, and this has been going on for a while. Do you remember can you remember that thing? And what you have to remember, of course, Brendan, is we only ever really hear about insecurity when it starts affecting rich people. So can you remember David Allen Simmons here is mentioning the old two guys on a motorcycle. Can you remember in 2018 when they banned two riders on a motorcycle inside? Yes. But only in a certain part of the city. So, yeah, in this part of the city, there might be rich people getting affected by these motorbike crimes. We don't care if you go and rob people down in, Bosa or Kennedy or whatever. But for God's sake, don't do it to the rich folk. And it is funny how quickly that starts to become a thing.
Yeah, well, and of course that had other effects, like just in terms of people trying to get to work, two construction workers going on their motorbike or whatever. So you kind of... you don't see the unintended consequences behind those decisions. But like in fairness, that again, these are scary incidents, and obviously they're going to stick in the mind when you see them. Like my Irish friend lives, in a relatively posh part of town. He's been here 30 years, so he got in there. Well, it's actually his wife's property anyway. Down at Usaken, around 124, just off the Septima. Ooh. And he's got cameras on his house and everything. And yeah, outside his house, he had that 2 guys on a motorbike walking by, speed up to this guy who's walking by. Now, obviously, he had just come out with money because, they targeted this man. They knew he had something in his bag. And like it's scary when you see it and you're thinking, God, if that happened to me. But like maybe these are tipped off people. It's like, we know Ollie's going to be walking with 1 million pesos from there to there. Like, or maybe it is just hit and miss. Like, because you said it's not crime ridden, but if you're a foreigner or anybody and you experience that, like it does take a lot of kind of deep breaths and deep thinking to kind of go, look, I just got unlucky. The chances of this happening are like maybe 1 in whatever million. But when it happens, it leaves a very, very sour taste. And as I said, I know I've had nearly an incident every year, and each time it's like, I can't believe it happened again.
No, I know what you mean, and that's why I really hate this idea of dar papaya, because, like you say, your 2 options become living your entire life in fear, constantly on high alert. And the other thing is, let's come back to that idea of dar papaya. I know we've talked about this before, but it absolutely drives me insane when people kind of say, look, you're giving papaya, and you say, well, but what could I have done? Like, I was at a party, it was late at night, I get a taxi to go home. Oh, you can't take a taxi, dar papaya. All right, then I'll take a bus. No, definitely giving papaya, you can't do that. Okay, so shall I walk home? No, that's definitely giving papaya, you can't do that. Can I stay here? No, you can't stay here. What am I meant to do? Teleport? Like, you're putting people in these situations, and people will say, oh, well, you're giving papaya if you're taking this bus route or whatever. You go, well, it's between my house and my work. What am I meant to do? I don't have a way of avoiding this. So that really drives me insane.
Yeah, and I wrote a story about that years ago as well, that whole dar papaya thing. Like, it is one of those things that, like a red rag to the bull. And when somebody says it to you directly after the incident, it's like, well, thanks. Like, don't get me even angrier. By the way, Andres Mateo Lozano Guzman, you're meant to have a thick skin in this game, journalist or presenter or whatever, but I take offense, and I'm upset that you said thanks, Ollie, just for the show. Never stop doing it. Well, God, thanks for that.
I will point out. I will point out this moment. Andres is one of my students.
Okay, that's good. I hope you're doing it for. Well, I take pity on you, so Andres. Tough one that you've Ollie as your prophet. Anyway, one thing go on.
I'll very much be Oliver tomorrow, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. That doesn't need to be discussed here.
Extra homework. Yeah, I want to mention the big one, or a big one, and it's kind of everybody's fear. And we've had Vice videos about it, and I've had podcasts about it. The Bogotá Nights have written plenty about it. Yeah, the devil's breath, the scopolamine, whatever you want to call it. Like, when I first heard about this, I kind of thought it's a myth, because I've had a few incidents where, there's been drink involved, and then I've had thefts or whatever, I've been robbed, and people have said, oh, well, like, if you don't remember, then it might have been the devil's breath. That's what it was. And it's an easy fallback. I go, oh yeah, that was definitely it. But like, no, I just think I got too drunk and I didn't remember, and I did stupid things. So just for people who aren't aware of it, to kind of fill them in what it is and what it supposedly does. And I mean, if it does happen to you and it's real and it's genuine, it seems there's not much you can do.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've heard people say it's not the real. I mean, it's this kind of famous zombie powder that kind of puts people into a very docile kind of state. From a plant that you can easily find in the hills of Bogota. It's not hard to find at all. There is scientific evidence for it. I think I would definitely agree that. I agree with you that I think it's overstated. I think a lot of things are attributed to scopolamine that perhaps aren't actual scopolamine cases. I mean, you can be drugged with lots of things for a start. I mean, people can put sleeping tablets in your drink or roofies or whatever. There are other parts of the world where this is not available, and yet people still get their drinks spiked. So, let's not go over the top on it. But having said that, I've got plenty of friends that have reported very unusual. And like you say, yeah, sometimes, Brendan, it is somebody where you think, yeah, he's trying to pass off a very dangerous situation. He's bringing strange people back to his house, very drunk, blah, blah, blah. Does look like it was a little bit, it's risky behavior. But having said that, especially women that I know who have sort of said, I went out, a couple of drinks. I don't like getting too drunk because I want to dance, and I want to be careful about being attacked and assaulted, which I think women worry about in a way that we don't tend to. And yeah, they said, and I suddenly felt absolutely sideways, and luckily my friends were with me, and I managed to say, look, I don't feel good, can we get out of here? Yeah, really worrying.
Yeah, and I guess, as you said, on YouTube there are plenty of videos, but I'll plug my own. There was a Northern Irish man who had an incident again, allegedly, with the scopolamine. I interviewed him in November last year, so you can search Brendan Corrigan or Kevin McCaffrey, I think was the guy, Devil's Breath or whatever, and you find out a little bit more about how it affected him and things like that. Just talking about kind of incidents in bars again, you could say this is almost a trivial way to be swindled or whatever, but it's happened to me in these tiendas. Not of late, I have to say, thankfully, but in the early days, in one particular incident in the centre, I was with an Italian friend and another Irish friend, and we got talking to the table next to us, and it was all kind of friendly banter or whatever, and they threw over a few beers on our table, and of course that was the way they were counting the beers. How many had you on your table? A very scientific way of how many beers and what your tab is at the end of the night. So we returned the favour with a couple, but they were throwing over a few more. And anyway, then the guys came over and said, we're off. And said, okay, cool, good luck. Then we went to pay, and all their beers, and they must have had at least 20 on their table, were charged to our account. Now, I think they were regulars as well in that tienda, so they obviously had the owner in on it or whatever, the worker, the mesera. But yeah, a very lively exchange, especially between the two Irishmen present, i.e. me and the other guy. But I'm not sure did we manage to kind of get away with not paying at all, but we certainly had to pay more than we actually drank on the night. But yeah, so those things can happen too. So again, you have to be careful, I guess, and sometimes they happen. That's dims are the brakes, as they say, Ollie.
And actually, I'd like to come back to that point you were saying about scopolamine. Like, look, it comes back to what you're saying before. It's not a crime-ridden place. It doesn't happen every minute. And I think what is really noticeable is the amount of people that will tell you, if you get in a taxi, it's definitely going to be a paseo missionario. You're going to be held at gunpoint, forced to go to ATMs, all this kind of thing. But actually, it doesn't happen to very many people at all. It's really overstated in terms of how often it actually happens. And, everybody always knows an uncle or, a mate down the tienda that it definitely happened to this one time. And I would say Scope's slightly different on that, in that I think pretty much every foreigner I know in Bogotá, my Colombian friends not so much, but certainly every foreigner I know in Bogotá has at least one friend, direct friends, with a tale about scopolamine.
Yeah. Well, I do recall another mate of mine was convinced that he had an incident we were we had a Monday session, put it that way, and then he went home and he lived. We were doing it up here at the far north, and he went back to his place down in Santa Isabel, and then it's like, oh, I've lost my phone. You know, and I'm sure, like, I don't remember in the Transmilenio, I think somebody did something X, Y, and Z. And I just happened to pass by I remember the last place that we had a few drinks in, and his phone was there left charging. So, like, he had already posted on Facebook, oh, my phone was stolen last night, blah, blah, blah. If everyone wants to contact me, and people are going, oh, no, Cape Payne, what happened? Is that, no, your phone has just been left charging in the last yen that we drank in. Which is reassuring, of course, because a lot of people think, oh, if you did that, it'd be gone anyway, because they kind of go, oh, it must have been stolen. But shows you there are good people.
No, I mean, most Colombians are. I mean, this is the thing, like most people, most places in the country. I will say one thing about having left stuff behind bars, though. I used to leave my bag behind a bar quite often at a place on Septima. And one time I accidentally went home without my bag, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just go down tomorrow and get the bag back. Returned the next day to find out that the police had sealed it. And so I had to wait a week to get my bag back.
Wow. Thankfully, I don't live in a kind of place. That happened to me here a couple of years ago, but went back the next day, and yeah, the guy still had it, but it was a more kind of family-run tienda. I don't know if that our producer telling us that it's time to go.
Subtle.
It's a little bit late. By the way, I just want to have my Cristiano Ronaldo moment. This is not Coca-Cola. I do not drink Coca-Cola. I think it's the Farc beer. I had one of them left behind months ago. Yeah, so it's quite nice. I don't usually drink alcohol during this broadcast.
Hang on. For anybody who doesn't know what Brendan's talking about, he's talking about La Roja, which is a beer produced by ex-combatientes of the FARC from Tolima, in their Tolima base. I happen to know the guy who started the project personally. He's a great guy. It's a decent beer. And if you want to get hold of it in Bogota, get down to Potemkin at Parkway.
Okay, yeah, our producer's definitely telling us it's time to go. Anyway, guys, until next week, enjoy the Puente weekend, and we shall talk hoy en ocho.
Ciao.